Welcome to episode 76 of Communicast, a communication skills podcast. I'm Scott D'Amico, president of Communispond, a global communication skills training organization. Today, I'm thrilled to have Molly McGrath on the show. Molly is a powerhouse in leadership development and team management, with a unique talent for turning struggling teams into cohesive, high-performing units. In this episode, we explore how clear and consistent communication can transform your leadership style and create a culture where teams not only survive, but thrive. Molly shares her proven strategies for building trust, fostering collaboration, and ensuring that every voice on your team is heard. Whether you're leading a small team or managing a large organization, Molly's insights will give you the tools you need to lead with clarity and purpose. Let's dive into this conversation that's sure to inspire and equip you to communicate more effectively. Molly, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Scott.
My pleasure. Really looking forward to our conversation. To get us started, why don't you tell the listeners just a little bit about you, your career journey, and the work that you're doing today?
Sure. I am the founder of Hiring and Empowering Solutions. I've been in business since 2008. Prior to that, I owned a software and training company for focusing primarily on lawyers. And through that journey, we'd have all these conferences across the country serving law firms across the nation. I go to the conferences and break bread at the coffee breaks, things of that nature, and be like, tell me a little bit about your business. What's working? What's not working? And 100% of the time I'd hear, business would be great, but for the employees. How do I train my employees to step up and lead? And that really sent me on my journey to the creation of Hiring and Empowering Solutions. My business model is by and large, I do recruiting, but also on the consultative side for employees. There's no lack of training, consulting, business growth for entrepreneurs, for C-suite, but it's really the people, the frontline people, down from the receptionist to the marketing coordinator, administrative staff that I'm incredibly passionate about. So I have a training program for employees in the administrative side of things. And that's really my passion, to really grow people up on the front lines from the administrative place, to cut down on retention, cut down on turnover, and really give them the ability, the courage, and the gift to feel like a value creator within their roles.
That's brilliant, because if you think about where things really happen in businesses, it's within the administrative staff, on the front line. Those are the folks that are getting things done. So if you can get those folks to lead, to perform better, to stick around longer, I think you probably see this big ripple effect throughout the organization when it comes to productivity, results, all the way around the board. So it's really cool. And it's also neat to hear about how this came about, right? You're at conferences talking with folks and trying to understand what's going on in their business and just really listening, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about today when it comes to communication skills, the importance of listening to people and processing, and then in turn, taking that into an opportunity to address a gap or an opportunity in the market. So fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm sure with your line of work, as you mentioned previously, doing work with lawyers and law firms and now running your own business, come across lots of folks that have very strong communication skills, maybe people with poor communication skills. I'm sure it runs the gamut there. But if you think about that term of strong communication skills, or you hear that somebody is a great communicator, what's the image or the picture that comes to mind for you?
You know, for me, it really starts with energy. And that's what I teach people time and time again, especially on the employee side. You know, you have a visionary, an entrepreneur, a C-suite, and they are classically trained in communication for the most part. And I love you pick the word strong, because that could be a blessing or a curse in regards to their delivery. Your intentionalities are well, but again, it's all in your delivery and your energy around that. So somebody with really strong communication skills has the match between the verbiage and the language, of course, to be able to clarify, verify, get into somebody else's perspective. But it's not only the words. I think so often people anchor to that. It's the ability to be able to read the energy, to be able to read when somebody's shutting down, to be able to read when somebody's starting to get defensive and things that nature. The word skills, you rip that apart, and I'm deeply curious about that. It's an ability, a craft that you have, but so often you could go to a course, read a book, listen to wonderful podcasts and things that nature, but you have to have it in action. And the way that you get that, especially on the employee side, you have a quote unquote boss, which the unspoken rule to an employee is you're lucky to have a job. You're lucky to be here. You are to do what you're told, carry out your job description, keep your mouth shut, show up for work, do a good job, and you'll be rewarded with a paycheck. And these are words that employees have told me that they believed were in the rule books, and they were never really asked for their opinion or anything of that nature. And I think the skill that I pour into for employees is first, you have to have courage. But if you start to use your voice, and that's really what communication is ability to use your voice in a very skillful manner, facts, data, information, without the emotions, first and foremost. But it's a two-sided relationship. You finally have the courage to go in to your boss or what have you and say, why are we doing something like this? I have some ideas on better ways that we can do this. And then you get met with a strong personality that really squashes it or shuts it down or to minimize it and say, oh, that's a great idea. We'll put that in the idea bank, and then you never hear anything about it. So, a strong communicator is approachable. They are present. They are grounded, and they are deeply curious. From my perspective, so if you see somebody that's shutting down or they say something and they're getting excited, but they're met with resistance, that you are able to, the saying I hear all the time is read the room, but it's really that and then some. If you're getting one word answers when you ask someone for their opinion and they're like, yes, no, what's working, not everything, what's not working, nothing, then you have a communication breakdown.
So much good stuff in there. Absolutely love that. And a few things that jumped out to me. At the beginning, you were talking about energy when it comes to communication. And I think so often people conflate high energy with great communication skills. The person that can go up on stage and rile people up. Just because you're comfortable and have high energy doing it does not necessarily mean you're really effective at doing it, right? Your message may not be in line with what the audience wants or is expecting, or you're not communicating it in a way that's going to land with the audience. So I think energy comes in so many different shapes and forms. You can convey that energy, I think, oftentimes when you're passionate about something, and also when you create, as you mentioned, the connection between what you're saying and how you're saying. I think that's when that energy and that confidence comes across. Then the other thing that you mentioned is this idea of, using your voice and starting to bubble things up. And I was so happy when you brought up, why are we doing something like this? Here are a couple of different other ways, right? So of having solutions when you are going to leadership. One of the past guests talked about this concept of being an idea grenadier, which is basically that pulls the pin on the grenade and just throws it over the wall and says, you deal with it. But if you actually come in with a potential challenge, have some solutions ready. And then the final thing was, as you described a great communicator, I wrote down approachable, present, grounded, and curious. And to me, it's no shocker that if I think of a great leader, I would use those exact same words. So if you think about being a great leader, there's definitely a strong tie-in to being an effective communicator.
Love that.
So as you're going out there, you're working with organizations, you're uncovering some of the needs, especially on the front line and the administrative component. What are maybe one or two of the big key communication skills that you're either seeing companies are struggling with, or they're having trouble developing or attracting, or the flip side of it, where they have people, these are the people that are thriving because of X, Y, and Z when it comes to those soft skills?
Yeah, I talk a lot about this in my book, Fix My Boss. It originally was called Fix My Employees because that's what I would hear from entrepreneurs all the time. But then playing with it, writing a book cover that an employee would actually want to pick up. They'd be like, oh, someone gets me. But really, it's a sneaky way to get them on the same playing field. And I talk about courageous conversations. And it starts so often where I'll hear from leaders, they're like, how do I get my employees' confidence up? I'm like, well, it starts with courage. So the soft skills and the skills that I really see in communication, the key communication skills are number one, the courage to use your voice in real time and not hiding out behind technology or not stuffing things or batching things for when there's an appropriate time to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is really to clarify and verify after each statement. You've probably heard the saying before, there's always three sides to every story: what he said, what she said, and what was intended. And then number three is really that circle back and the following up after the conversation, because so often there's a processing, there's a time to go back, whatever was discussed. So having that courage and encouraging courage within your organization for people to use their voice. I can't tell you how many people do communication ping pong, hide out behind Slack channels and email and all these different formats that are there. And I've seen organizations get destroyed by it because of the lack. They're not able to have all the other things present, like we discussed, being present, being deeply curious, being able to clarify and verify. So really creating a culture. A lot of my clients, I make them have that in their core values, some emulant of that we are a culture of, approachability, and we really want your voice. Your voice matters. And starting with that. So when you have crickets or deer in a headlight within your organization, in my experience, there's a deep level of communication breakdown. People are afraid to talk. Everybody's always picking from their past. They hear either their past employer or their past situation that they had where they did speak up and they were either fired or let go or reprimanded in some way. Or there's stories around the water cooler conversation about why so-and-so is no longer here. And then it just has a ripple effect of that, they were insubordinate or whatever stories that people come up when they create in their head. So that's what I believe is the number one, is the courage. You don't just wake up and get confident. You get confident when you have the courage to speak, honest while respectful, again, energy, tonality, all that, sticking to facts, not emotions, coming with proposed solutions versus buckets of problems. And then when you are rewarded in some way where you see the lean in effect and you're not shut down or squashed in that, that's how the confidence rises. And then the second is to clarify at the end. So great conversation. I would just want to clarify and verify what I heard you say is X, Y, and Z or what have you, which causes the other person to pause. And I always talk about the power of the pause, and to pause and be like, you know what? Thank you for mirroring and reflecting that back to me. That's probably what I did say. But now, because when you say those key statements in communication, and I call it a debrief, and create it in a standard, whether it's just a run by direction, or if it's a deeper conversation about a project or a strategy or what have you, always do a debrief at the end where you're like, okay, great meeting, great conversation. I want to debrief. I want to clarify and clarify what I heard, verify this, what you intended. And it just causes everybody to stop and be present, especially as visionaries and entrepreneurs. we have no shortage of ideas.
Mhm.
We have no shortage of a tremendous amount of, information rolling around in our head at any given time. So it causes us to really be present. And then the circle back afterward, just follow up. Okay, great. I'm going to go do this or that, what have you. And I'd like to have a follow-up meeting after. My recommendation is no more than 1 week, because people get to process, roll up their sleeves, get into it, whatever it is, whether it's a performance review with an employee that might not be really, or a project that's going south, whatever it might be. You always need that circle back.
The circle back for me is critical. And if I think of an organization where employees bubble up ideas versus an organization where employees really do feel empowered and engaged to bring ideas up, the chasm between the two is massive, but it can, I think, quickly be solved with that circle back. Because a lot of times what happens is those conversations happen. Molly, I have this idea for X, Y, and Z. I think we should be doing this. And you go, oh, okay, cool. That thank you for sharing. Let me think about it. And then crickets. There's nothing. Not even a, hey, Molly, we looked into it. We can't do it because X, Y, and Z. Even if you're coming back saying we can't do it, the fact that you took the time to come back, you gave them an update, and you explained why it doesn't fit into our strategic roadmap at the time, blah, blah, blah. Or we don't have the resources or the bandwidth to do this now. Or, I shared this and we are going to start doing something about this next quarter, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Going back and just providing them that update is going to empower that person to feel more confident and courageous to bring up the next thing versus, every time I tell Scott something, I never hear anything about it. Why even bother anymore? So yeah, exactly. And then you
goes in the
risk
ether.
It's in the ether. And as an organization, you risk missing out on potential great ideas and big opportunities just because people no longer cared because you didn't really create that environment where they wanted to bring ideas and felt valued for bringing ideas and received updates and had open communication about it. So absolutely love that.
Yeah, I want to say, so, what, like you said, you hear crickets, but even more sometimes, depending on people's social styles and their Colbys and their DISC and other assessments out there, you might have that one and done conversation and they go gangbusters and start implementing. And sometimes it might be a 2 millimeter shift, process improvement, what have you. And I love that you love the circle back, because I always put it on the employee to, take the burden off the boss, the entrepreneur, because they're so incredibly busy. And at the end of that debrief, just say, okay, great. After you do the debrief, clarify, verify, take the initiative and say to them, can we come back next Tuesday's meeting or what have you? Here's what I'm going to do and get it this far and then come back to you. Because so often I'll hear from employees, well, we talked about it and they said, yeah, let's have a follow-up meeting next week. And then they, the boss, supervisor, leader, never did anything with them. Like, you see their world, you understand their world. They're walking out of this meeting and getting whacked, by 2x4s before they even get back to their office. So take the initiative for them, because you have to be deeply invested in it just as much as them. It's a two-sided relationship.
Yeah, I love the 2x4 analogy. It feels like my every day this week so far. One of those days. So,
yeah.
Molly, as you think about your career success and the journey that you've been on, what would you say would be maybe that one or two key communication skills? Or if I asked somebody close to you, a friend, colleague, what really, from a soft skill component, has helped to set Molly apart? What might they share with me?
I would really say it was the clarify and verify and the debrief after. For certain, it's really interesting. I'll hear my kids, from the time they were, now they're in college and in their 20s, I'd hear them with their friends say, well, just to clarify, like, yes, I did a good job with that. But it was a mentor. When I started out at the tender age of 27, working in a legal industry with, if anyone knows anything, working with attorneys, they're incredibly hard-headed, not traditionally the best communicators outside the courtroom, and really have no management or leadership skills. And I had a mentor, my boss, my very first boss back in 1997 when I stepped into the industry, really poured into me and really provided me with those communication skills. He was a trained coach, trained communicator, and what have you. And really, as any leaders listening to this, I feel like it's in our job description, it's the number one bullet point is to pour into our people. And, for me, I think that's my greatest soft skill is to be able to clarify and verify, but it's also to make time for the people that are helping me carry out my vision in my business. And so often I'll hear from employees, well, I don't want to bother my boss because they're so busy. I'm like, they're always going to be busy. The day they're not busy, they're out of business.
Mm-hmm.
And so you suffering in silence and not sharing that you see why our retention rate with clients is down because this one problem, you could bring the next $1 million idea. So you have to make time for them. You have to use your voice and go to them. And really, I think that's a greatest skill is I don't like fighting for what you need because it doesn't have to be bloody and bruisey, but if you are committed to the why of why you not need time and speaking to somebody else is listening in a way that makes a difference for them, hey boss, I really need 15 minutes of your time because I think I have the solution for why our conversion rates have dropped by 27% in the past month. Know your numbers, know the data and information. And when you're speaking to a busy boss or entrepreneur, you have to speak with metrics, data, and information, not, hey, do you got a minute? Because we all know they ain't got a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even just when you said that number, those numbers there, it piqued my attention when I heard that. So a couple things there that really jumped out to me. One is, yeah, it's always fun. Like I have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, and my life is around communication skills and definitely challenging times when it comes to communication skills at that age. But when I see them model some of the things that we work with our clients on, or that I try to model with them, or I hear them talking about it, or they're using these skills in a presentation at school, it is always fun to kind of see the kids pick that up. And when it comes to this idea of the leaders are busy, right? And for me, I say this quite frequently to my team when they come. They say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I know you're busy." That's what I'm here for. My
Yes.
sole purpose of being here is to help you be successful. Because if you're not successful, I'm not successful. So yeah, as a leader, trying to instill that culture of, yes, I'm busy, but I'm here for you, and I make a concerted effort that when I'm with one of my employees, whether a phone call one-on-one, we are together, on strategy sessions, they have me, right? My email is shut down, the phone's off. I'm not focusing on trying to be on, responding to IMs or text messages and like, yeah, what? Okay, yeah. They know they have me. So that's a good way that you can signal as a leader that you really care about your employees and are not too busy for them, is that when maybe they take 5, 10, 15 minutes, you're giving them 5, 10, 15 minutes of time, give them that undivided attention, because quite honestly, you're going to solve more in that 5 to 10 minutes of undivided attention than it is the ping pong back and forth of messages and texts and emails and phone tag, or trying to get or being distracted when you're trying to talk. Focus in, you're going to absolutely achieve a lot more. And you hit on something. It was kind of a perfect segue. You kind of hit on the next thing I wanted to talk about was, somebody who has influenced you in your communication style. I think you mentioned it, a mentor you had very early on was one of these folks that really did. As you mentioned, they poured into you, they invested into you, and I think where you kind of got that, clarify and verify mentality of, how do you make sure you're on the same page? Because, and I love this quote that someone recently shared. It was 100% of things that are said by the listener. In essence, it doesn't matter what I'm saying. It's ultimately what you say in your brain based on what you hear. So it's that giving, as the listener, taking that opportunity to really clarify, verify that what you heard, what you said, and that gives everyone opportunities to very quickly make sure they're on the same page. Because as you mentioned, sometimes you may have said something and intended something, but it was received completely different.
Yeah. I love that you use that example for with your own team. You're on your phone, your DM, whether you're in a Zoom room or face to face. Early on, my mentor, he actually tested me, so we would be in our meetings and we were virtual back then, this 20 some years or what have you, but it was on freeconferencepro.com or something, if anyone remembers that. And he was not present at all. I could hear ruffling papers, what have you. He's like, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And I'm asking him really pointing question about a workshop that we're just about to give and what have you. And halfway through the meeting, we weren't even physically, I couldn't tell, but I knew from the energy again. He said, listen, I'm hiring you to really carry out this mission. We are launching a new program, what have you. And we're working on your confidence. We're working on your courage to hold me accountable. I'm an 8 quick start on the Colby. I'm an off the chart, he's an off chart visionary. It's like nailing jello to a tree every day. And he said, I need you to hold me accountable just as much. And so I need, when I'm not present, I need you to have the courage to tell me I need your undivided attention. You use that word right then and there and say, we only have 20 minutes for this meeting. And these are the 5 key things against going back to data, metrics, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to use less words. I need you to tell me the impact that if I do not give you my undivided attention, what this will happen when I'm going on stage and I'm not prepared. When I need to know that we're supposed to have 100 people in the room, we only have 30 registrations right now. Marketing's not doing their job, whatever it is. So it was really great to get that again, permission to hold him accountable, because if I'm not holding him accountable the way that he's available for me, then the ultimate goal of the business is not going to be carried out.
Absolutely. It's great that he gave you that permission. And sometimes you have to do that on your own. You have to take that step of you step in and say, hey, this is important. I really need to, and find a tactful way to say
Yes.
it. And I remember early in my career, I worked at a big organization, large sales team all across the country. And I was leading, multi-state territory. We would occasionally have team meetings where the big territory director would come in, then the regional vice president would come in. We would have group meetings, the teams would be presenting their business reviews. And in the back of the room, the territory director and the VP would just be kind of on their phones and emailing and back and forth. And at the end of the one day, I said, listen, you're here to hear from this team, and what you're signaling to them is what you have going on your computer and your phone is more important to you than our business, what we're talking about, our clients and the deals that we're working on. So if I could ask, when we're here in the room, just to ultimately be present with them, because it means a lot for them to have this time with you, to learn from you, to get your feedback, to hear about how they could potentially approach these clients, and then also get those kudos sometimes, a good, pat on the back for a strong quarter or whatever like that. So yeah, sometimes you have to take that initiative, because where you're focusing your attention signals to whoever else is in the room what's important. If my
Mhm.
phone is getting my attention, it's the same thing at home. When my kids come up and they're talking to me, if I'm doing something on my phone, checking email, I'll stop, I'll put it down on my lap, put it face down on the table, and look to them, because that my energy is going to them, not to the phone. The important thing at that point is them.
I love that.
Molly, as we're wrapping up here, what piece of closing advice would you have for folks listening to this, just really around the importance of developing these communication skills that we talked about today and the impact it can have on their careers?
Yeah. The one thing that I always talk about and say in my books, my writing, my podcast is that you have to remember, first and foremost, we're hiring, dealing, working with human beings versus human doings, first and foremost. And at the end of the day, just like your children, the 3 things that they want is time, attention, and feedback. And when they know they have that, and I love the example that you even used with your children or the VPs in the back of the room and what have you, is that when they know that they're important enough to get your available eyes, to get your available presence, they will take a bullet for you.
Mhm.
And so often, I would say that to the leaders, the visionaries, and the entrepreneurs, but then, for the employees, you have to make them want to spend time with you too. If you're consistently showing up unprepared, not clear, concise, well communicated, you're not able to get to the bottom line of what you need, what you're asked, come with proposed solutions versus constant problems, speak into their listening in a way that makes a difference with them, for them, then, it's again, two-sided. It's that, one thing is to give them the time and your attention, but it's both ways. You have to show up prepared for the most part of what the key points are that you need to discuss, address, handle, whatever it might be, the impact, the cause and effect if we don't handle this right now, and then really get to the point of getting when you're going to circle back and get that feedback on it. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. So I'll hear from employees all the time that I feel like a burden. I feel like they don't give us enough time. I hear this over and over and over again from leadership. But then I hear from leadership so often, when I see their car in the parking lot, so to speak, I don't even want to go in the building because of the lack of communication skills, as you say, of really getting to the point and being really impactful and insightful with the words and the delivery on how you communicate. That it's really that simple.
Fantastic advice, Molly. I really do appreciate you joining me, sharing your expertise. And for those listening to this, what would be the best way for them? One, to connect with you. Two, to buy a copy of your book, Fix My Boss. And I'll make sure I include the appropriate links in the show notes.
The easiest way is to go to our website, hiringandempowering.com. We have our books linked there. You can opt in. I drop a pocket coaching once a week and a podcast and a blog. So I'm consistently trying to give tips, techniques, and value bombs to support both the employer and the employee side to get on the same playing field and speaking the same language.
Perfect. Was that a value bomb that you dropped? Did I
Yeah.
get that right? I love that. Oh, that is so cool. Absolutely love that. Molly, I'll be sure to include the link to that in the show notes. Molly, thank you so much for joining me. Really did enjoy the conversation. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.
Take care. A big thank you to Molly McGrath for joining us and sharing her expertise on leadership and communication. Molly's strategies for building trust and fostering open communication within teams are incredibly powerful, especially in today's ever-changing work environment. As we conclude this episode, consider how you can apply Molly's advice to your own leadership journey. Remember, the best leaders are those who prioritize communication and continuously seek to improve their skills. To keep these valuable conversations coming your way, be sure to subscribe to Communicast. And if you found value in today's episode, I'd greatly appreciate your support. Leaving a rating or review is a simple yet impactful way to let us know how we're doing and to help others discover the show. Thanks, and have a great day.